recreationalization, but I'm not for legalization. And then you have those types of distinctions. But slowly from there, you move into a medical marijuana state, which is the current posture of Florida. So we are a medical marijuana state. There are legal dispensaries here where you can, if you're identified as a patient with a set of chronic conditions, which unfortunately are set by the government and not by your doctor, you can actually have access to medical marijuana in a select number of delivery systems that at this point does not include smoking. And then you have a recreational state, which is adult use, where you're allowed to say, I would like to partake, and then you go, you show your identification, and then you partake. There are people who go from one state to the other to indulge. Go to California, it's a recreational state. You can show your ID, and then you can use there. You go to Colorado, same thing. We also have, because of this situation, Canna refugees. So that's another term that you should be familiar with, where there are sick people who, because of the laws, are forced to be on their way to dying, and someone in their family has pity on them and says, you know what, we're going to give everything that we own, everything we have, all our loved ones, and we're going to move you to a legal state so that you can use cannabis as medicine. So when we talk about licensing, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because, as Lena did a great job covering, she talked about a vertical environment, which is where you have one license that allows you to do pretty much everything. I just want to call it, that's a costly environment. That's why it's $60,000 for a license, because it is a vertical environment. You know, as minorities for medical marijuana, a lot of advocacy groups, NORML, you know, a lot of attorneys, we go to Tallahassee and lobby against the vertical environment. Vertical environment means you don't have the variety that you would have in a state where it's horizontal. You don't have, there are high barriers of entry for regular people to participate in and be a part of the industry. So we are, you know, I'll say I am against the vertical environment. I lobby every year for it to go to a horizontal environment. A horizontal environment is where there are different licenses for different things. So you can get a cultivation license. In some states it'll be like $15,000, $7,000, $10,000 for just what you want to do. So when you think of a farmer, and this is just going to show you how unfair it used to be with the 30-year nurseryman requirement. When you think of a farmer, you may be a multi-generational farmer. You've been farming all your life. Your dad farmed, your granddad farmed, all of this farming experience. And then you want to participate and diversify your crops. And they tell you that, well, to diversify your crops, to include marijuana, you need to learn how to extract or be able to pay someone from Colorado to teach you how to extract. And you need to bring in someone who understands a retail environment, when that's not what you want to do. You just want to diversify your crops. And that's why it's so unfair. You know, the government arguments for vertical integration is we want to know who we're doing business with, we'll have more control, but at the end of the day, you know, as we've seen in our more mature markets, it usually starts out vertical and then over time it transitions to a horizontal environment. So I kind of touched on why minorities are fighting for horizontal. It's all about greater access for a more diverse group of people. The federal question, is it really legal? So, you know, you have the history of the Controlled Substance Act, where, you know, it's Schedule 1, it's identified as Schedule 1. Then you have the Cole Memo, where it was permissive in a controlled, regulated environment for the states to do what we've been allowed to do. The Sessions Memo, which was called a rescindment, and that's when all the banks went crazy and started canceling accounts. It was a horrible time, and it was unnecessary because it really was very similar to the Cole Memo. It just gives a little authority for the attorney generals to enforce. But at the end of the day, there wasn't much difference between the Cole Memo and the Sessions Memo. It just was catastrophic for our industry from a banking perspective, because a lot of banks just decided they were going to dip out, and everybody was afraid. And as you see, months later, nothing's really changed. And then, you know, I always like to talk about descheduling and rescheduling. So, you know, when you think from a pure patient perspective, it may seem like it doesn't matter one way or the other. It's like, well, if I have to go to a pharmacy or if I have to go to a dispensary, it doesn't matter. So rescheduling is going from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, where you'd have to go through the pharmacy space and get access to your medicine. But when you think about, our economy, when you think about our freedoms, when you think about, variety and things like that, you want it to be descheduled, because we've already proven over a decade that we have enough business acumen to operate dispensary spaces that in a way that is considerate of public safety, where people can get access to medicine. So, I'm in favor of completely descheduling it, taking it out of the government's hands, and allowing our entrepreneurs, our small business to flourish through the medical marijuana or the adult use recreational marijuana space. So the importance of decriminalization, we kind of touched upon decriminalization, and I identified it as an important first step as you go through the stages of legalization. We have to look at the history. So historically, we had the war on drugs, just saying, no, this is your brain on drugs. It was just a whole bunch of foolishness and brainwashing. But there were certain communities that really paid the price for the war on drugs, and those communities are, mostly urban, African American, Hispanic communities where they paid the penalty. You see that in our mass incarceration situation currently. We talk about the school to prison pipeline, where when you catch that first cannabis charge, that's a gateway to the prison system. For a young person, that can mean you're not going to college. You're not getting financial aid. Your life is different. Your life has changed. You're in the system. And that shouldn't be for something that is just a plant. So we fight to make sure that we educate our law enforcement, we educate our legislators. You had a question earlier about how the political scene. How is it affected by cannabis? And what we're seeing at the government, or let's say the governor's race, we're seeing where gubernatorial candidates are coming out and saying, oh, I'm in favor of cannabis. Because they're looking at the 71% of voters in Florida who said we want it. So you have, Bruce Nathan, he's a Republican, he's saying he's in favor of it. We have Andrew Gillum, who is a Democrat, he's in favor of it. Gwen Graham, she's a Democrat, she's in favor, and they're putting on their websites, they're trying to engage with those communities. We have a new candidate, Jeff Green, who also says he's in favor of it. Now, Adam Putnam, just lost.
Well, we don't have to worry about the concealed permits in cannabis. We don't have to worry about concealed permits in cannabis if he's in charge, right?
Yeah, I just don't want him to be in charge. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm not even going to try to philosophize. I'm like, don't do it. Don't put him in place. Don't put him in position. But I said all that to say that, as politically, we're seeing the political acceptance and where they're trying to target our enthusiast, activist, cannabis community as part of their political platforms. Mm-hmm. So we need to hold them accountable to that and make sure they're changing this stuff too. So they're not appealing just to the rich as far as, the licensing structure, but making sure that we are truly decriminalizing at a local level as well as the state level to make sure that we don't have people who are young people especially, who are losing their opportunities for a life, for a full life, for being able to take care of their families because they made a mistake, which is a mistake we're all making, all of us who indulge at a young age.
And let me ask you, going back again, because you said it off camera, the laws have now changed where if you had been incarcerated, if you have a criminal record of purely marijuana possession, are you now able to get a job in the industry here in Florida?
That's a local movement.
Okay.
So it's there's a ban the box movement happening. So Commissioner Dale Holness, he's one of the commissioners for Broward County. He is very integral in making sure that happened for Broward County. Chevron Jones, state rep at the state level, he's also been in favor of ban the box, making sure that you don't have to indicate when you're applying for jobs that you have a criminal past to give people opportunities. And again, most people's first charge is a cannabis related.
Right, and beyond just average regular employment at retail or whatever it may be, the ability to actually be employed within the cannabis industry.
Yes. Okay. So
is critically.
It is critical. So when we have a statute that says you can't have a felony, it's so unfair to so many different people. people think of felons as you shot someone, you killed them, you know, gangbanger, blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, I think like walking on a railroad track or like, you know, doing something to the flag. I mean, there's so many felonies that are things like pranky things that people would do. So I think we need to take that into consideration, that not every felony is a violent crime. There are some things people do when they're young that if we did it, like I'm, you know, in my 40s, so if I did it back in my day, there'd be no internet, you know, or there was internet, but there wouldn't be any, like, you know, social media and people recording on their phones and stuff. So there are things that my peer group, my cohorts did that we would have had felonies.
Oh, yes.
All day, you know. So taking that into consideration, we encourage our law enforcement to have that perspective when they're making these rules and this legislation.
Because there has been a direct correlation of people who have been arrested for marijuana not being able to be employed within the marijuana industry. Is there a push now in Florida to remove that stigma?
I think a push is too strong of a word. I think we have so many balls in the air with our laws are so unfair right now and so backwards that, you know, we have to pick and choose what we fight for. So you have to look at it
from the 500
we gotta
feet.
We gotta go from vertical to horizontal. You know what I mean? You know, we're there where we're trying to, you know, we want to smoke, we want bud in the stores.
Right.
So I think the advocacy organizations have kind of aligned around like the top 4 issues.
Right.
And
what about releasing people that are?
There's no legislation. It's not at this point at Florida level. I mean, we look to like the federal level for those types of changes as a role model for what we can do in Florida. We're a conservative state, so you're not going to see that. We're not going to be that proactive. But you know, we have the Cory Booker, which you know, Marijuana Justice Act.
For those who don't know, Cory Booker is the state senator of New Jersey.
Yeah, so
and he's working on a law for the Senate.
Very progressive. He's gotten Barbara Lee on the House side supporting it.
And he may be running for president. You didn't hear it from me, but I may.
Yeah, I think he should. But yeah, to that point, like we're not there yet. I think as advocates, we've kind of just said, you know, we don't want to boil the ocean. We'll get there. And again, California's still working on their laws. And they've been around, what's this, 12-year legal market?
Well, it's 20 if you
20?
take, I mean, it's
20-year legal market, and they're still working on their laws. So we know, those of us who've researched and been involved, we know that it's going to take time, but we know there's some key things that we have to change immediately.
I guess from the New York and New Jersey, since we're so close to adult use, now a lot of the advocates are very focused on, okay, the people who have been incarcerated purely for the marijuana, they need to be released immediately, and they need an expungement so that they are able to work within the cannabis industry, or any industry.
Absolutely. So what you'll see is advocacy groups doing expungement workshops, expungement days, along with like law schools and you know, other organizations, and encouraging lawyers from the community to do an expungement workshop. Rather than you'll see
pro bono stuff.
And pro bono stuff. That's where you're seeing that activity, not at the legislative, from the legislative perspective. So it's coming, but again, you know, look at California before we always have to like look and say, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, we're not going to get everything. We're not going to take every issue to the mat, but we do what we can. You know, Dave, do you have anything on that piece as far as like, you know, the felonies and?
I mean, I think the states that have turned the rulemaking over to kind of citizen groups like California and this triple CCC and Massachusetts have probably done the best job on integrating folks with that pass. So, for instance, Massachusetts, under the adult use regulations, they actually have a chart and show what won't and what will qualify as you know, keeping you from becoming a dispensary agent. So anything marijuana related under their adult use rules, not a problem. Felony level stuff, you know, selling to children would disqualify you, but because it came from a commission of people, some of which, you know, 2 of which are of minorities and actually attorneys and have seen how, you know, certain communities have been devastated, really made that a push. Massachusetts just rolled it out today, and have pushed to do that. And it becomes probably less here because we're legislature driven and they could give 2 shits. But we see some of the community advocates getting positions and overseeing and implementing rules, that's where you see the push.